One evening in October 1974, a few tribals living in the Simlapal forests of Odisha in East India were walking home. And as they were about to cross the river Keri, they saw a 7-week-old tiger cub. Its mother was nowhere to be found, and they knew that if they left the cub there with no one to protect her, she just wouldn't last long in the forest. So they did the best thing they could think of. They carried the cub to the house of the field director of the Simlipal forest. This was a man named Saroj Raj Chaudhary. With open arms, Saroj Raj Chaudhary and his wife took the little cub into their home. They fed her and they cared for her. In no time, the tigress cub became a great friend of the couple. The cub would roam freely inside the bungalow. She would jump up on beds and chairs exactly as a pup or a kitten would do. And they gave her a name. They decided to call her Keri after the river in the forest where she had been found. Now, Keri was playful and she gained strength rapidly. At that point, the couple thought it was time to let Keri out into the forest because they felt that it was the natural life of a tigress that would best suit her. So one fine morning, Saroj and his wife opened the gates of their courtyard and Keri scampered out into the wilderness of the forest. By evening, they were a little worried what was happening to Keri. Was she okay? Had she learned to hunt and fend for herself? Had she met her kin? Had she made friends? At midnight, they heard loud roars from the courtyard gate. Keri was back and she was asking her family to let her in. And when Saroj Raj opened the door, she bounded onto him and gave him a loving hug with a very gentle swipe of her paw. Now, Keri was very careful. She knew that her paws and teeth were sharp. She also knew that her strength and her weight could topple people. So she was very careful so as never to hurt anybody. Keri insisted on snuggling next to Saroj and his wife, and she finally fell asleep on their bed that day. That became her permanent home. The story of Saroj Raj and Keri is very well documented. I've in fact written a very detailed piece on it with beautiful pictures of how they all lived together. Now, when Keri was growing up in the household of Saroj Raj Chaudhary, there were very few tigers left in India's forests. From nearly 40,000 tigers at the time of Indian independence, India had less than 1,800 tigers left in the wild. An alarm bell had been sounded. Project Tiger had been launched in India. Wildlife officers had been tasked with the jobs of protecting tigers from being poached. Most wildlife officers did their very best to protect tigers, though none went as far as Saroj Raj Chaudhary. Now, Project Tigers definitely stopped the decline in tiger numbers, but the numbers did not really grow much. But very recently, for the first time, India has seen a very sharp jump in tiger numbers. From 2010 to 2022, the tiger population in India had doubled from about 1,706 tigers that we'd had in 2010. Today, India has more than 3,680 tigers roaming in the forests of India. To celebrate this story of tiger resurgence in India, I have two young guests who've joined me in this recording. And if you're new to this podcast channel, hi, you're listening to What's New Today. This is a kids and family podcast about current events shaping our lives. This is your host, Sangeeta. I'm from India. And in this episode, I'm joined by two young children. Should I call you young children?
It's
Yes.
fine. It's nice,
Okay.
actually.
So, can I request the two of you to please introduce yourself? And as we always do, let's go in the alphabetical order, shall we?
Hello, I am Devansh Bhojnagarwala. I live in Kolkata. I study in Lakshmipat Singhania Academy and I am 10 years old.
Hi, I'm Isha. I'm 15 years old. I live in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, and I go to Babaji Vidyash.
Which grade are you in, Isha?
I am in ninth grade, heading to 10th.
Wow. Welcome, Devansh and Isha. So, as part of today's episode recording, I had already shared the details
Ma'am,
of the topic.
ma'am, not welcome. Welcome back.
All right. Welcome back, Devansh and Isha. So, ahead of today's episode's recording, I had shared details of the topic that we are going to be discussing with Devansh and Isha. I told them, please do your own research, read up about how the tiger has made a big resurgence in India. When you read about it, what did you find most interesting about this topic?
Tigers are the only ones in the species who are of big cats who are close to extinction. And that there are only 5,574 wild tigers left in the world, and 3,678 tigers are in India.
So, you were first very surprised that
Yes.
the other big cats have not been close to extinction. It's only the tiger that has been close to extinction.
Yes, not the leopard, not the panther, not the cheetah. One more thing, India has more than 70% of the world's tiger population. Exactly 75%.
Isha, what did you find most interesting?
In the 1900, like exactly the year 1900, the Asia alone had around 100,000 tigers. But slowly this number had reduced, and by 1972, there were only 1,827 tigers in India. And but it started increasing back in the 2000s. In 2002, there were 3,700 tigers in India, and in 2010, there were 3,200 tigers in India. So what I noticed here was that sometimes when we put in a huge effort to conserve an animal again, we suddenly start lacking once we see it come back into the wild. But then from 2010, it showed that there was a 24% increase in the tigers from 2010. So that's something I found really nice to hear,
You found it very disappointing that
that
from
it
nearly a
reduced.
100,000 in 1900, which is 125 years ago, we have come down to just about 5,000 odd. And today we
Yeah.
are celebrating that we have at least 5,000 odd. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, it's ironical. But
Yeah.
I still think we should take heart. It's not like the dodo which has come extinct, right? We've not
Yes.
let the tiger go completely extinct. So I think we should still celebrate that, Isha. It's okay amongst the many other
Um,
givings we have.
I can bring Harry Potter into this. In the
I'm
book Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the original storytelling of it, there is an animal. It is known to muggles completely as the dodo, and they think it is as extinct, but it can but it can disappear and reappear anywhere. So yes,
So there is a possibility that tomorrow morning, when I'm feeding my pigeons and crows, I might actually see a dodo.
it's not the Harry Potter world.
How do we know? We're all muggles. We may not be noticing
Yes.
any of the witches and wizards amongst us. Thanks, both of you, for sharing what you really liked. One thing that interested me a lot was the fact that tigers have grown in numbers, not in areas or in wildlife reserves which have no human population. Instead, they've seen that in India, tigers have grown in numbers alongside large communities. Like typically, these are farming communities or communities that rear a lot of livestock, which are living either inside the forest or bordering the forest by and large. And where they coexist, they are thriving in numbers. Why do you think this might be so?
Can I say something not to the answer of this question, but generally, India has 138,000 square kilometers of tiger habitat, and all the tigers in India live alongside 60 million people.
Yes, that's a very interesting fact that certainly corroborates the point I make. But what do you think is the reason for 60 million people coexisting with these 3,000 odd tigers in India?
I don't think that there's any sense in this, because if tigers are living alongside people, then if the people who place the tigers there want cooperation between the people and the tigers, then the opposite could also happen. Like the people could start hunting down the tigers.
So my question is why? Why are they not hunting those tigers? Because those tigers seem to be thriving in numbers. They've doubled in numbers. If people were indeed hunting them, don't you think we would have lost tigers more than we've gained?
Maybe it's because in these populous states, I think Uttarakhand and Madhya Pradesh, all these states, they are home to reserve parks and national parks. And here, poaching or illegal hunting is outlawed. It is banned. It's not allowed in these areas. And if I'm not wrong, I think that most of the tigers live in these areas. So they're not necessarily a threat to the human beings. And it's placed like what Devansh said, the national parks are formed in a certain area, a place where humans are not disturbed by the tigers, and a place where the tigers are not disturbed by the humans.
Your
Yeah, that's
thesis is once we've created a national park, a tiger reserve, and we say, people, you're not supposed to go in there, and tiger, please don't come out and meet people. And there are laws against poaching. All is well, tigers will grow in numbers. So that's what we need to do for all kinds of animal species.
Not necessarily, but I think that it's part of the reason.
Or
I
ma'am, there
thought,
could also be like people trying to conserve the tigers, like soldiers are posted in different areas. There could also be people who work for the protection of the tigers.
yeah, that is one of the many tasks of the Indian Forest Service officers. So let me ask you a counter question. There are richer countries, and there are countries with far lesser population, which have tried tiger conservation and have failed. Classic example is Malaysia. Malaysia, on a per capita income basis, which means per head income basis, Malaysia is a country which is richer than India. It has far less density of population than India also. By density of population, I mean, in 1 square kilometer, how many people live? That is called density of population. Malaysia is less. So it has more money, it has less people, but tigers haven't thrived. They've also passed laws that no one's supposed to shoot tigers. Poaching is illegal. If we catch you, we'll throw you in jail.
Could local community participation be a reason? The locals have agreed to return some of their land in an effort to help conserve the tigers, and awareness could also be playing a key part in this, I believe.
You have hit the nail on the head, Isha. It is not about how much money you have. It is not about how much space the tigers have. It is largely about how people who live along those border areas think about the tigers. It is their attitude towards a tiger which matters a lot. So even very rich countries with very less density of population can't achieve the success that India has seen if their local populations don't cooperate with them. We've done a podcast series on wildlife protection in India. In that, there's one very interesting point that the man who drafted India's Wildlife Protection Act said. Remember you were talking, Isha, about, I think, I don't remember who said. Was it Isha? You said that in 1972 that India came up with a
Yes.
Wildlife Protection Act. Yeah. So the man who helped draft it is a man called Dr. Ranjit Singh Ji. He's a former prince of a kingdom. And so he said that one of the most important things he had seen, that the Rajas who lived in the erstwhile princely states in India, what they would do to protect the wildlife in their own forest areas. So, if a tiger ventured outside of the forest and ate up somebody's livestock, if there was a goat or a cow, and if a tiger or a lion or a leopard had mauled one of these and had eaten them up, people in those communities would be simply irate, right? So, what they would do, they would want to take their revenge. They would want to kill the tiger. So the Raja would reach the spot, would reach the house of the farmer who has lost his livestock, and almost instantly give him the money that he has lost and maybe a little extra also, so that his anger is assuaged. So when people know that if they lose their livestock and they're going to be compensated by somebody in the government, then their anger is not towards a tiger because they understand it is part of the natural prey predator cycle. So the tiger is going to eat a goat. That part everybody understands. But when I have to lose money, then I'm very angry. So then I want to kill the tiger. So India's Wildlife Protection Act has this provision that if somebody loses a livestock or whatever it is, the government compensates them within a certain time frame. So getting the money immediately also is very important. That is one reason why these communities that live alongside the tiger reserves have a slightly more positive attitude towards these creatures. Wow! Now we have a good story going in India, and the approach India has adopted in bringing these tigers back in larger numbers is something now many other countries are going to copy.
It's nice to know that the entire nation is in an undertaking to help bring back such a wonderful animal. It's not just the government trying to uphold its animal population, but like we mentioned before, it's the locals too who are trying to bring in the animals and they understand that wildlife is beautiful and that it's not something they want to lose.
Mm. Devansh had earlier said that the tiger was the big cat that was closest to extinction in the world. But one big cat had already gone extinct in India by the time of India's independence, or soon after India's independence.
The cheetah. I listened to a news story about this, whether it was on What's New Today or a normal news channel. But after India's independence, I believe the cheetah population went extinct due to excessive poaching for their hides. And in an effort to bring them back, the Indian government is participating or cooperating with some African country governments in order to bring them from Africa and bring them to India in an effort to bring back the population of the cheetahs. I believe they're in Kuno National Park currently.
There are currently 24 cheetahs in India.
Thank you for that information, which is way shorter than the 3,000 odd number that we have of the tigers. So, on that celebratory note, I shall
Wait.
leave.
You said 3000 odd number, but 3682 is not an odd number. And 3000 is also not an odd number.
The even number 3,000 and an even number 3,682 tigers that we have in India. Celebrating that, we shall sign off today's episode. Wildlife enthusiasts out there, if you haven't heard our podcast series on wildlife protection in India, it's a brilliant series, even if I may say so. It talks about how we've protected the lions, the elephants, the crocodiles, how Rajas used to hunt, how the current government policies are largely copying the policies that were adopted by the Maharajas who lived then, which were actually very sensible policies, as we have now found out.
I remember one thing that you told in those series that that most of the Rajas who loved hunting and hunted a lot had the most animals in their forest because they needed to hunt, and so they took care of the ecosystem, and that's why there were more animals in those kingdoms.
Absolutely. And the story of the Raja of Junagadh is a very famous story that we've spoken about in that podcast series. It's very interesting that Dalhousie, who was then the Governor General, I think, of India, he wanted to come to Junagadh and he wanted to hunt the lion. He hadn't hunted a lion anywhere. So he came to Junagadh and he requested the Nawab of Junagadh, please, I'd like to go and hunt. So if there's a princely state, and even if the British Governor General was there, he could not just randomly go and hunt. He had to have the permission of the Maharaja or the Nawab. So he came and asked the Nawab of Junagadh, and the Nawab turned around and said, ask me anything, but I will not let you hunt a single lion in my forests. Because he knew that the lions were already very small in number, and any more hunting would definitely threaten their survival. So a few Rajas and Nawabs in that part of India, which is Gujarat, they were the ones who took a lot of steps to protect the lions. And that is one reason why the Asian lion is still surviving in the world, and it is surviving only in Gujarat. There's no other part of the world where the Asian lion has survived, thanks to the efforts of these kinds of Maharajas and Nawabs. So there are many, many more stories like this. I will leave a link to that also in the show notes below. Thank you. I hope you all had fun reading about this and recording today's podcast. Thank you, Isha. Thank you, Devansh. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.